Hello. Hi, everyone. How's it going? All right, we are going to get started in just a second. If you have not already registered, I did put the link in the chat, but I will drop it in again. Go ahead and register for this event, and today we are talking about honeypots. I'm really excited. First of all, the name is fun. And second, it's been a while since I have done a stream with you all. So I'm also very excited to hang out and be here. All right. Hi. Good to see you. Okay. Hi. So, how many of y'all have heard of honeypots? I know it's a fun name, but traditionally, not the honeypots you think of when you think of honey. But they are attractive. Thank you. It's just the first slide. All right, so over the course of the time that we are hanging out together, we're going to be talking about honeypots, which are basically cybersecurity tools that are generally used to lure and deceive hackers. And yeah, we're going to get started. Okay, so we're going to learn about strategies for us to use to outplay hackers at their own game. We'll talk a little bit about what some of these honeypots are, what types of honeypots. Yeah, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I'm Alina, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a coach here at MLH, and I really do all sorts of things. I did just graduate recently. I studied computer engineering, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. Okay, so the way we're going to do this, we will do we'll do an introduction of what honeypots are, just a brief definition, what their purposes are, what they could be beneficial for, and then we'll go into different types of honeypots that we could use, and what those purposes are specifically for each of those honeypots, and then we'll look at honeypot itself, the setup. We'll look at file systems within that honeypot. We will take probably a short break somewhere in there, and then we'll talk about real world uses and use cases for honeypots. Cool. Okay, let's dive in. So how many of y'all here have heard of honeypots or have used one perhaps? Basically, honeypots are these tools that we use to deceive hackers or capture them by mimicking systems that already exist. So you could, and it could be from, mimicking like a small system or a service. You could have it, be something that's a small service that's built into your website. Say that you have maybe like a shopping cart or something, a checkout system. You could use a honeypot to mimic that service to be a real service, so that when a hacker logs in and tries to exploit the system, you're actually capturing the that's funny. Maybe we'll have to do one of those. So when a hacker actually tries to exploit the system, you could see how they're doing it and get to learn more about your hacker. Okay. So we basically want to simulate a vulnerable system, and then attract hackers. So this honeypot, the way I think of it, is a good way to attract hackers um, to use the service or to try to hack into it, and it would allow us on the opposite end to basically play the role of the hacker, just flip the roles, but give us valuable insights for how the hacker is trying to attack the system. And it'd be a good way to identify maybe any vulnerabilities you have, and build up defense strategies. Um, yeah, and you can with honeypots you could like log commands that a hacker might be putting in. We'll look at this a little bit later, or just see their keystrokes. If they're downloading any sorts of files or anything like that, we could also see things like that using a honeypot. So there are a few different types of honeypots. Basically, when you have a pure honeypot, that's basically going to be a large scale, like full scale system. And this could be like servers. It could literally mimic an entire production system and be a huge thing that you could use. Now, obviously, this is very resource intensive, and it takes a lot of. It's basically deploying a full scale system. So really, anything that goes into building and deploying a system would go into building a pure honeypot like that. A high interaction honeypot is basically going to have a wider range of services than the mid and low range interactions, and they still do require more resources and setup compared to the others, but they're used usually as some sort of software. They could mimic databases or processes that you might have within your system, or they could be external systems that you create. Then you have the mid interaction, which is basically going to be a good middle point between high and low interaction. It's going to have capabilities of your application layer, basically. And then you have the low interaction, which is less resource intensive. And these types of honeypots are basically a lot simpler, and they use things. They give you, a way to interact with a limited number of services using TCP, IPs, and network services of sorts. They'll give you a basic interaction and capabilities with the attackers, but they do require less maintenance and are less likely to be compromised compared to the high and pure honeypots. So we will talk about a few of the different honeypot software that's out there. We'll pretty much just go on a little search today and look at what different capabilities they offer, where they fit into the pure, high, mid, and low interaction honeypots. Just so if you are using one, you know what best suits your needs. Cool. The first one we'll talk about today is going to be Kari. And this is a medium to high interaction honeypot. Generally, you would use it for designing like brute force attacks, or to, I think this part is really fun, to gain like shell interaction that might be performed by an attacker. So you can run it as an emulated cell, basically. You can incorporate fake file systems, databases. You can see when a hacker is interacting with this. You can see when they're adding or removing files, or when they are even logging into a system. So you can capture SSH and telnet of these hackers. Yeah, they can be, they can definitely, it is very cool. They can be very useful depending on what you're trying to use it as. Um, really, when we are trying to look at these different solutions, it really depends on what you're trying to learn about your hacker, and what services you already have that you're trying to either protect or build some sort of infrastructure that allows you to check for any vulnerabilities that you might have. And you want this to be something that's like attractive to the hacker itself. So like, you know, if you do have a database, you could create a honeypot that allows you, with a database, maybe a fake database, that allows you to see if a hacker does try to access it. Then you're able to see how the hacker is accessing it. And that would help you basically create systems knowing how the hacker is actually thinking about breaking your systems, right? So definitely very cool and useful. Cool. Now we're going to do a basic setup of this type of honeypot. And I'm going to share a couple of links with y'all. This is the documentation for this project itself. I'm going to share my screen in just a second. These are the two links that I'll have up here. Has anyone here set up a honeypot before? Okay. Let's see. I am going to share my screen with y'all. Just make sure that I clean it up. Great. I am going to now share my screen. Okay. So open this away. I will put it here. so I can still see y'all in chat. All right. So the two links that I shared with y'all were about this honeypot. The first was the GitHub repository that has everything that you need to get started with Curry. So it is a medium to high interaction honeypot. And like we said earlier, it's great for designed to log brute force attacks on the shell. So say that you're trying to SSH into a system. This would be a great way for, if you had this honeypot set up, for you to be able to monitor your SSH ports and see any sort of traffic that's coming in on those ports. This is open source, so you could, if you wanted to, you could you could contribute to it. I was looking for the word there. So you can run it as an emulated shell, and that's basically how we're going to do this. So basically, the way to set this up, you could set it up as a Docker container. The way that I'm going to have us do it is going to just be downloading. We're going to clone this repository here. Let's see. There's a few things you'll need. So I am using I am on a Windows system, but I am using Bash, so I have access to Unix commands, and that would probably be helpful if you do have that. Zoom in. Yes, I can zoom into the terminal. Let's see, let's have it be 36. Is that good? Are you able to see that a little bit better? Also, I can zoom in on here, if that helps. Okay, awesome. Cool. Good. It is not WSL. I actually have a version of Ubuntu running on here. Okay. Let's see. So, as you can see here, I do have a few different honeypots that I've started on here, but we are just looking at one of these. I can, after this session, upload all of these different honeypots and onto my GitHub, and I'll share a link with y'all if you want to check out how I've gone about setting each one of those up. But we are just going to focus on Kari right here. Before we get started, I am just going to do a sudo apt get update. case there's anything that needs to be updated. Cool. So there are some dependencies that we'll need to run this. Right. We will need, we are going to run this in a virtual VDNV. So those I already have, as you can see. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually clone this repository, and this is where the repository lives. So we'll go ahead and clone that. And I already have that, as you can see, so I'm just actually going to CD into it. So once we have this repository, you want to create a virtual environment. As you can see, I'm actually already running my virtual environment. So you don't have to run this in a virtual environment, but it works better. Let's see. So this is basically what you're going to see inside of your directory when you've cloned this directory. Now, the one thing you won't see right away in this directory is this config file. So the config file actually lives in, it lives in this, let's see. Actually lives. You'll hear my terminal, the sound it's making, just out of curiosity. Okay. I believe it's in there. So in the etc directory, you'll see this file right here, the Corey.cfg.dist. You actually want to copy that file. So basically, if we take a look at this file, sorry, not ls, we're just gonna, this version is really not supposed to be edited. So you want to go ahead and make a copy of this file and have it be saved into just the original Corey directory as Corey.cfg. And that's where you can make all of your changes. So basically this is, I can also share this file on, let me actually pull up the file on VS Code so that we can scroll through it a lot easier. So this is the original file they give us. Most of it stays the same, but this is the copy that I've made that actually lives in just the Corey directory. Yeah, I do like Nano. It's simple, yet powerful. Okay, so basically this file is how you're going to configure a lot of the different services that you can use through this, where you're, downloading things, for example, where you're logging information, what you're logging, and what you're setting up. So all of those things little features that you want within your honeypot are all going to be configured here. Let's see. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for y'all. Is that better? Okay. I think that should be better in terms of visibility. Did not mean to do that. Okay, cool. So network specific options. We've got check login. Oh yeah, this is cool because you can either authenticate as a user, which is going to use like a password that you set up in a database, or you can use auth random, which basically allows you to just let anyone in without actually authorizing them. So where this could be useful is like if you have, if you have maybe say a hacker is trying to SSH into your system and you have this set up in such a way that you're using auth random, basically the hacker is just going to log in and think that it was able to like guess a password or whatever, and probably feel very confident that they were able to get into the system and continue exploiting it. Whereas on your end, what you've done is you've allowed for them to log in, to be authorized randomly, maybe after, say, 2 attempts or 10 attempts. And you're basically allowing them access to the system so that you can see how they're going to go about, hacking or infiltrating your system. So auth random, I think, is something that could be really cool to use. This is basically when you're running a pool of things. And then, let's see, guest configurations. And then you've got, let's see, details. Okay, so these are configurations for different types of services that you can set up, basically. This is for a proxy. Also here, we're going to use SSH and Telnet. We'll set those up. So we've got we can see that our host, our port is on 2022, and the Telnet port is on Tritan 8. Would you be able to explain your question? What do you mean by a Linux hardening procedure? While we wait on that, so our Telnet port for this is set to 2023 or 23. So in this case, if we were SSHing into this, we would use 2022, and for Telnet, we would use port 23. Basically, more information on the pool, which we aren't using for this case. Yes. Uh, Curry is great to be set up on servers that you would want hackers to prevent hacking them. You could make it so that you're imitating a service that you already have on the system and sort of misleading them from actually hacking that system and rather hacking the honeypot that you have, where you could set up like dummy data and things like that, and basically just get to learn about how your hacker is actually trying to hack your system. Yeah, that's a great use for it. Um, so this is basically, we're using the shell version of this, which is its default anyways. Um, cool, great. Um, this gives us information on the architecture. These are all things you could potentially then comment out and use. Um, just information on the kernel version, SSH version. So you see here, so originally in the file, SSH is not enabled, or it is enabled actually, Telnet is not. But you can toggle this enable to be on or off. Um, and these are basically where SSH key files are living. So this is pretty standard. And then you have the supported keys right here. More information on the version of SSH, ciphers that could be used, HMAX. So these are the endpoints that are going to be listening. So these are basically the port numbers that these services are actually running on. So SSH is running on 2222. And here I have do have SFTP enabled and port forwarding or direct forwarding enabled as well. And then I also have this forward redirect enabled. So I'm basically trying to redirect port 22 to redirect 2222 to port 22 here. Okay. I didn't think this was necessary for what I have set up right now. So this enables tunnel forwarding requests to other addresses. I'm not really trying to forward a protocol to a proxy right now, but you could use that for this. So what this no authentication checking does, originally this is set to false, but setting it to true would mean that you are not requesting the user to verify, or they can just give you dummy information for authentication. And like I said earlier, this could be useful if you're trying to give your hacker access to this to the service or system that you're setting up a honeypot in. Okay, and then we have the telnet specific options. This is disabled by default, but I have set it to be enabled. These are the endpoints that we're using, like we saw earlier, 2223. This automatically just reports to port 23. It and this is generally standard, but it could be different on your system. Okay. And then these are others. So we have output plugins, which are extensible mechanisms to send audit log entries to third parties. So basically, you could do this in a lot of different ways. You could have it be JSON based, and you could actually have it go to this file actually exists in the system, query.json, and it would just be another way to log information about your hacker. So say that the hacker is trying to log into an SSH into your server. You would basically, by enabling this and actually having that information go to that file, you'd be able to see how they're logging in, attempts that they've made, things like that. And a lot of these logging features do similar things, just in different places. So you could actually integrate this into, if you're using Elasticsearch, you could integrate this into an elk stack. And it obviously enable it, and then there's going to be a few other things that you're going to have to set up, but you could set it up using Elasticsearch. You could give it credentials, and let's read about this TLS encryption. Communications between the client and the ES server should naturally be protected by encryption. Good. If requests are authenticated, to prevent from man-in-the-middle attacks. The following options are then paramount if username and password are provided. Okay. So you could have verifications that you set up for these certifications if you're using SSL or TLS. Cool. I am not completely certain what output D shield does. Let's see. Let's see if we can. Copy that and bring it over here. Oh, okay. Well, the page at that link right there actually does not exist. Okay, never mind. Let's actually look it up because now I'm curious. Is this useful for? Okay, so DShield is what I'm seeing. It's a distributed intrusion detection system, and it is used to collect and analyze network security data from different sources. Okay. It seems like it's used for intrusion detection, which would be something that you're using this honeypot for, probably. Cool. Then you have this gray logging module, just another place to log this data. You could have it be outputted to a syslog. So if you're doing stuff in a kernel, you could actually have these things be logged in your syslogs. And I think that's really cool. If you're doing something with, like, if you're dealing with operating systems, this would be a great way to log and keep things, keep these files in your syslogs and stuff. Cool. You could also write this to a text file, so you could write your logs to a text file. If you're using MySQL, then you could have that set up. Obviously, you're going to need MySQL and a setup for it to actually use this. But you could, have your MySQL set up and then be able to forward and pass on this information to that. Rethink, just another database. You could, so this is a great way to, so you can connect databases to this, obviously. And that's where the medium to high level interaction of this comes into play, is being able to connect to your databases and being able to send that information to the databases. So again, another database, SQLite 3. So you can have it be there. Another database, Mongo database, MongoDB. So you can have that set up and set up your connection string right there. So Splunk is an event collector, basically, and you could also have it be sent to Splunk just over HTTPS. And then you've got HP feeds 3. That I'm not sure what it is, so I'm actually going to look that up as well. HP feeds 3. Okay, so this is a data feed framework that enables collection and sharing of network security related information. You can capture network data, packets, and things like that. Cool. So you can have it be sent there. Virus total. You could have it sent to Cuckoo. That's a fun name. Malshare. You could, this I find cool, you could actually have these sent to Slack. So if you have Slack set up, you can send all these messages to Slack. And basically you would just go in and set up your token, the channel, and things like that that you'd want it to be sent to. Let's see, I'm actually going to copy this link as well, and we'll look this up. CSIRTG stands for Computer Security Incident Response Team Groups. Mouthful. Wow. Okay, so this is a great way for people to collaborate. So this is primarily used for people to collaborate and share information on threats. So you could use this probably in the workplace if you're working with a team of people. And it's basically used as a hub where you have security information shared. Let's see what it offers. So it seems like it can be integrated with security information and event management scenes, and IDS, intrusion detection or prevention systems. Cool. So primarily it's supposed to be used for collaborating with teams and sharing any sort of data that you're scanning on your, say, server or system. Okay, you could also have this outputted to a socket log, um, an S3 bucket. You could have this sent to AWS, or if you have a bucket that you've set up. So, in terms of using this for AWS, it'd be really useful for groups of people, and especially if you have like big systems that are hosted within AWS, you could integrate this in very nicely with it. Okay, and then you could use it on Influx, Kafka, Redis. Let's see. You could do reverse DNS lookups. What is MISP? I feel like I've heard of MISP somewhere. Ah. Yep. So MISP is a way for exchanging and storing data again. So it's a sharing platform, uh, similar to the CSIRTG. What's it that we talked about? Cool. So the one I'm actually interested in is that we can actually integrate this with Discord. So as you can see here, I've entered this URL. This obviously was not here before, and I enabled this output to go to Discord. So I'm going to show y'all how I had that set up. I'm going to try not to expose my Discord though. Okay, if I can move it. So basically, I've made this server that I'm just calling Honeypot server, and it's like super simple to set up. You basically just want to create a webhook. So if you were to go to your server settings, you have this section called integrations, and you can go in there and you see that I already have a webhook here. So I call this Honey Plotter, and basically it can post to the general channel. And to set it up on here, you enable the output to Discord, and then you drop in your URL. So I've just copied this URL and dropped it in here. You could also create a new webhook. SpideyBot is what it's configured as now. And you would just copy this webhook. So super simple and sort of seamless integration there with Discord. And yeah, so as long as you've got like traffic on your ports or anything that you're logging, that information could be sent as an output to Discord, which is super cool. Let me see if you're putting anything in the chat. Just a second. Cool. What are some questions you'll have so far? Okay, that's a good question. As a hacker, how can I become aware if a honeypot is set up or not, like not falling into the trap? I would say the first thing would be try not or don't hack unethically, first of all. And yes, always assume it's a trap. I like that. Um, so um, there there are ways, I'm sure, for you to check if a honeypot is set up, but I don't know what those methods are, because I don't think I've thought of it as being in a hacker's shoes, and zero trust. I'm actually curious now. That's a really good question. Um, okay, I'm gonna have to look up your question. I'm gonna bring this over here and we'll ask Google. Um, I mean, really, I'd say try not to be a hacker that is trying to run away from a honeypot. Um, but because it is something that could log information on you as a user, that might be something useful. Uh, I'm sure there are ways. Ah, okay. It seems like ways that you could check the IP address. Well, I don't think that would always be useful. Um, Maybe, but I think that with checking the IP address, well, I guess, how do you think using the IP address would be a way of checking for a honeypot? Can we check for IP addresses? Would that be a useful technique? I know. So what I'm reading, um, honeypots are distinguishable from legitimate systems like production systems. So experienced hackers could possibly differentiate between a production system and from a honeypot system. And yes, using fingerprinting techniques. So let's read. They could analyze files, like mounts, interrupts, or command line processes. So those would all be like files that are in the /proc directories. So if they see like um, files for a honeypot within those directories, then they could basically identify that it's a honeypot. Um, so yeah, experienced hackers, um, seems like they can identify the presence of a honeypot, and they can basically get information by system fingerprinting. So basically, they could look at services that are running, like if honeypot is running. Um, Maybe with a honeypot, because they're like they run usually different than production systems. An experienced hacker could probably come in and say um, that it has sort of uncommon features of the original production system, and so maybe that could be an indicator. They could uh, look at network traffic, because honeypots are generally going to have less network traffic than um, actual systems that are already out there. So they could, look in and say, this system or this service has unusually low network traffic. There might be something strange about that. Um, they could Oh, I didn't think about this. So honeypots do have, and we'll take a look at the directory structure in just a second, but honeypots do have they do have a slightly different like file structure. So they might have special files, or I guess honeypot specific files. And that could be like databases that are dummy databases that you've set up, or credentials or other sensitive information that seems too easy to sort of live where it lives on the honeypot. So I guess the way I'm thinking about this is maybe there's a good balance between how you set up your honeypot, where you want it to look alluring, but not too easy, because that might be a way for experienced hackers to say, hey, this looks too easy. There's something like off about it, right? Um, so, yeah, I think a combination of those things um, would be a way for hackers to gain insights on whether they're, I guess, hacking into a real system or if it's a trap set up for them. Yeah, that was a really good question. Thank you for asking that. I'm glad we went on a dive there. That was good to know. Cool. So this is the end of our configuration file. So we've seen that basically I've got this output to Discord enabled. And then we've also got SSH, and we've got SSH and Telnet. Where did it go? Enabled as well. So basically, both of these are ways for you to connect to this honeypot, or connect to this, really this system. And the honeypot is basically going to log information on when you do connect to these systems. Cool. So let's look at the directory structure of this a little bit more. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to, in this etc directory, we're going to have this cori.cfg.dst file, and you want to copy that into your home directory, basically, of Cori. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and done that, and that's where this file is living, basically. But I just have it, I've lost it, it's right here. So I have it right here, and that's basically where it lives, but you can just use the cp command, and then you've got etc, and then it was it was that, right? Yeah. Oh, it's because it's not backslash, it's just etc. And then you could copy it to, that would basically be your command, but since I've already done that, I'm not going to overwrite it, because I've made changes to my file. Cool. And then let's look into some of these other directories and what we have there. So let's go into bin. This is basically going to the directory that we care about here is going to be this Cori directory. Oh, sorry. These are basically resources that we have. So this is not actually a directory. This is just a process that we can run, basically. So when you create your virtual environment, there are a few things you can do. You are going to install the requirements. So all of the requirements that you need are in this file right here. So you could just type in pip install -r for recursively requirements.txt. But let's actually look at we'll just output this. Okay, so these are all the requirements that you need. I will say that if you are setting this up, I think this was just how my system was set up, but something that I ran into was I was having issues with Twisted actually being installed because of other dependencies. And also TFTPY. So the way I did that was when you create your virtual environment, I basically installed these separately before I used pip install for all of the other requirements, and that seemed to work a little bit better for me. So if you do run into any errors, you might have to uninstall things from your requirements.txt and then reinstall it, especially if it installed but only like in a broken state, because then you'll notice other errors that you'll have along the way. Cool. And then basically to run Cori, so you can also like set up a keybind to run this differently. But right now I just have it running using bin/Cori start. So you can see right here that it's going to, it uses Twisted to like log things. So you can see that it's basically starting the logger. It's taking just a moment to actually start, which is fine. Let me go back into our stream and see. Okay, looks like we might already have an instance running, so we'll stop it. And then we can just type in start again. Okay, there we go. So that was the instance starting. Basically getting a bunch of depreciation warnings, but they're not going to break anything right now. If you do get depreciation warnings while you're doing something, it's not necessary that it breaks things, but it is something good to know in case you run into something that might be caused by a depreciation of resources. So we can look into this log file, basically. So as we looked at earlier in the file, We have SSH running, we have Telnet running, and we have Discord running, um, or enabled at least. So let's go to the logs. And then, is it not? Okay, let's see. So in our bin file, we looked at the various processes that we have in here. So these are basically from the requirements.txt file. These are both in the etc file. We have these two files that are basically things that we should make a copy of. The user DB file is important when we're looking at creating a user DB like we do here. So that's what we're using right now. That's the authorization class that we're using. So if you look at this file right here, let's see. It just has dummy information right now, but you could change this to really whatever you want. Basically, you're giving access to anyone that's not root or anyone that doesn't put this password in, which those are pretty high likelihoods. And then you're just going to set up some password. But you can obviously edit this file and choose username and password and things like that that you want to grant access to. Okay. And then let's actually look at the logs. So those are going to live in the source directory. So let's do a tail. I'm sorry, source directory. And then is there a moment? Just a moment, y'all. Got this long file that I'm missing. Okay. Let's see. I think it's actually in var. There it is. Okay. Log. Okay, cool. So the log file actually lives in var log query and then query.log. So as you can see here, because we have enabled the JSON log was already enabled, but we've enabled Discord. So it's loaded the output engine for Discord. We can see that it is starting up when we started the process. And then we can see that SSH is starting on port 2222. And we can see that it's ready to accept SSH connections. And Telnet is starting on 2223, and it is also ready to accept Telnet connections. Cool. So say that you were to SSH into this system, maybe from another system, or if you have a virtual machine or something like that that you're using, then you're basically going to be logging. The information that you would log here would look something like, SSH connection attempted, or if there's any sort of failure, if you've attempted different passwords or something like that. That kind of information would be logging in here. And basically, if you wanted to, you could just use the SSH command. Really, on a virtual machine would be ideal, using your username for this server, and then your IP address. Cool. Leave that up there for a second. You can also deploy, you can set this up as a Docker container and deploy it as one. Let's see what we have in. So here we have all of these. We have a configuration file here, and we saw all of these different tools or things that we could connect to in the Cori configuration file, and that's where basically all of these directories live on Docker, Datadog, SQL, Squid, system. Cool. So once you have those basic setups for Cori, you're basically ready to, you could obviously in your configuration file add different things that you want to use with Cori. You could really make it as complex or simple as you want. In this case, we've just enabled a couple of things, and it's pretty much ready to start listening to anything on those ports. But you could go in and really change a lot of things and add features to this and make it more complex. Again, this is a low to medium interaction honeypot. So you could use it for databases, but you could also just use it for on the shell. like we're doing here. Cool. What information? Yeah. So the information that would get logged would basically be I would log in, except for I think it would show private information about my IP address. Um, but the type of information that would be logged would basically be um, like information on the fact that you've SSH'd, what the IP is that you're SSHing in from. Um, I can show y'all an example of maybe an output online. Let's see if I can share this and I'll zoom into it. But here's a Medium article. Oh, okay. So this is basically what it would look like. You can see that this person is trying to log in as root. It seems like they also have a. It seems like they have set up. If we look at this file, right here, it seems like they have auth random set up in their case. They're authenticating root, and they're using, so we also have keyboard interactive here. So if we look into this file, we can enable keyboard interactive, and it is enabled. So you're basically able to see what they're logging in as, because this keyboard interactive is set to is enabled to be true. And then you can see that it's starting the SSH service. And you've got the session request. You can see the terminal size. You can see what files they're accessing. You can see the commands that they're executing. So really, it's a way for, just on SSH connection alone, it's a way for you to see how the hacker is actually interacting with your shell. Like basically, in a lot of senses, you are logging their keystrokes, or at least commands that they're executing. So they basically did a PWD to find out where they were, and then they went into the home directory, listed out things that were in the home directory, and then they simply exited the session. So that's basically what it would look like. Obviously, if you were to download any sort of files or edit files and things like that, that would also be information that you could end up having logged here. Does that help answer your question a little bit? course, yeah. So yeah, if we look at they've set it up a little bit differently here, but they're basically, that was just their logs. And let's see, I do believe that they probably set up mm, offline enabled, so that allows so this basically allows them to start using that command. I'm still using bin slash Corey and then start or restart. Um, let's see. Cool. Yeah, this is a good resource if you're trying to set it up as well, which I can drop in chat. And also, if you want to look at the logs a little bit closer, you could do that using that link right there. Cool. So that was a brief overview on Corey itself, some of the capabilities it has, how to have a basic sort of setup, more so looking at the file structure of Corey, where things live, where you can find your logs, sort of commands that you could use to run it, and things like that. Cool. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. Do you think you'll need a break? Would you like to take a 5-minute break before we switch gears and go back to the presentation? Let's do that. Let's take a water break and we will come back in, let's say, 3 minutes. Sound good? In the meantime, I will turn up the music. And we will switch gears. Cool. All right, 3 minutes and come back. Hi everyone. Okay, so I have something. Um, a couple of weeks ago, I think it's been a couple of weeks now, that there was um, Tech Together New York that happened. I was there. These cool glasses I got. And they have honeycombs on them. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I think they're really cool. I feel like they're kind of fitting for this theme. Should I wear them for the rest of this? Okay. I think I will. They actually aren't too bad in terms of they don't really obstruct your vision too much. I can like read pretty clearly still through them, which is important, of course. But um, I do think the this setting that like so it's funny. It has like two buttons, but like one button doesn't actually do anything, and then the button on the side like changes all the lights and settings or whatever. I think I could like get used to the flashing, but it would take a while. Um, I think if you pay too close attention to the flashing, it's yeah, it's a lot. But this one is calm. It's like a very quiet pulse and change of colors. But let's see. I'm gonna have it be. Let's fit the theme of this. Keep it yellow with the honeycombs, and just we'll keep it like this. Um, cool. So we did a very basic setup of Corey, where I walked y'all through just how I had Corey set up and some of the files to look out for when you're setting up Corey, the configuration file, where it lives, the things that you could do with it. So it is a really great tool. Again, it is like we talked about. I'll go back to the previous slide. It is a mid to low interaction tool, Honeypot. You can, create application layers for it, connect to different services like the Elastic Stack, AWS, and things like that. Um, in terms of high interaction, you can get it to connect to databases and stuff, so it could be useful for that. And then we looked at a very basic version of using this for a low interaction tool, basically using TCP, SSHing into things, or using Telnet, and things like that. Cool. So some Yeah, good question. So, what are types of honeypots used in big corporate companies? And also, is it a necessity to use them in today's world and where there are many factors present? Great. So, we're actually going to talk about uses of honeypots here and how they can actually be useful in the real world in the next couple of slides, basically. So, um, yes, they are still useful in big corporate companies because they're great for detection and monitoring. So if you are trying to, like, say that you're maybe even a cybersecurity company and you're trying to um, detect any sort of like early threats that you might have on your system, like any sort of malicious activity, this would be a way for those teams or professionals to analyze attack patterns basically and identify any sort of new threats. So you would use detection and monitoring basically to understand how the attacker, the techniques they're using, how they're trying to attack the system, maybe the tools that they're using, or what their motives could be. So like we saw in the logs earlier for our simple query honeypot, the SSH logs that we saw where the user was accessing the system, they were going into different directories and things like that. We can basically see um, the patterns that they're using to look through your files, what files they're looking through, and how you could sort of make those files probably more secure. Um, and then we have things like threat intelligence and research. So this is a great way, again, to learn more about, just do research on how these people are actually using your system. And when when you have users or hackers um, sort of using your systems, what you can do in terms of like intrusion detection um, is basically you can deploy these honeypots as um, IDS systems, intrusion detection systems, and help your system have better network security. Um, So again, it would help you detect and divert any sort of hackers that you might have. And it's just an extra layer of security. Um, so you might have services underneath, like the honeypot itself, but having the honeypot there is just an extra layer of security, basically saying, hey, we know when people are trying to maliciously access our systems, and these are the types of systems they're accessing. And so it helps you actually build better systems. Um, and again, you can gather a lot of data by doing this in terms of any sort of trends that attackers might have or exploitation tools and techniques that they might use to actually infiltrate your systems. Um, and yes, they are used, you know, for research. A lot of this, I would say, you could think of as research anyways. Like if you're using them to monitor your hackers or to do any sort of malware analysis and things like that, you basically would be able to understand the hackers as they're coming into your systems, and they're a great way to like have a controlled environment for experimenting with these techniques, right? So say that you're creating some sort of a security technique, um, and you want to, integrate that or deploy it into your current system. Using it as a honeypot first could allow you to really experiment with the technique, see how people might, um, maybe put out some sort of dummy data or things like that, and see how hackers might actually interact with the system itself. And then you can go on and say, oh, we found out that these are the steps that a hacker takes, or these are the types of files that are most vulnerable to in our technique or in our new security features. Um, and that would just understanding your hacker would help you develop possible mitigation techniques, so that you're you know not going to put out a system that is vulnerable to hackers or might be easy or very attractive for hackers to hack into without them being secure. Um, and they do have a lot of uses in legal and law enforcement, but it is really important to like know that using honeypots also have legal and ethical implications, just because you are, you know, gathering data on the user itself. So when you have, especially when you have innocent users, it's important to, you know, let them know how you're using their data, and what kinds of information you're collecting on them. Does that help answer your question? Awesome. Good. Um, so there are a lot of other uh, pieces of a lot of different honeypots that you can set up. And we went over one of them, but there's so many out there. If you saw in my directory earlier, honeypots directory, let's see, I will show you all again. It's here. So here I just have a couple. Oh, sorry, you can't see my screen. We'll share screen here. Let's make it 36 again. Ooh, that's huge. So really, I have HoneyPie, Keepo, SSH Pot. Those are just like a couple, but there are so many more that you can use. And a few of those examples, again, Keepo is one that it's basically an SSH honeypot used to emulate vulnerable SSH servers. And it's similarly to what we saw with Corey. It will log activities of the hacker or someone trying to gain unauthorized access. And it's a good way to basically log that information and understand your hacker. There's a whole database of, I found a link on GitHub yesterday that had all these honeypots that you could use, and I will create a GitHub repo for all of you that are here today. I will drop it in the MLH Discord, so make sure you're on the MLH Discord. I'll throw a link in there for any of y'all that may not be in the chat in a moment, so that you can find the link of resources, and I'll basically have them all on my GitHub. So you'll be able to access this PowerPoint, you'll be able to access any resources that I used as I was learning about honeypots and things that I find useful, and documentation, how to set the various honeypots that I have in my directory, how to set some of those up as well. Cool. So that was the overall gist of what I wanted us to cover today. What are some questions that you might have? Did you all find this useful? What were some things that maybe you want to learn more about, or if you want like a specific stream that just goes over just setup of a honeypot, maybe this being sort of an introductory stream, and then if y'all want like just a whole 2-hour dedicated to step by step, maybe setting one of these up, adding, maybe even different functionalities to one. Yeah, that is a good question. So how honeypots function and how they're different from normal servers and how they collect data. So basically, the way I understand it, honeypots are a layer sort of on top of your current like application or server, or they could be an entire server with built-in functionalities of a honeypot. Um, and you basically have like um, you're basically writing scripts to collect various types of um, logs and or to log various types of data from the user. Um, so basically, you have a file system and functionality that gets implemented or even integrated into different platforms, like if they're databases or on Elastic Stack um, or on the Elk Stack, Elasticsearch. Um, Basically, you're setting up, the way I understand it, you're setting up services that would act as like layers on top of existing services to and with built-in functionality to actually collect data from the user. And I know it can be different for different types of implementations. So you might have different ways of collecting that data from your user. Um, but generally, that's how I understand honeypots collecting information. Does anyone else have an insight on that? Cool. Um, yeah, so basically you're, you know, collecting data on like different types of keystrokes or the things that the user is accessing, um, or network traffic or system logs and things like that. And it's set up in a very similar way. It would depend on your system, but it's set up in a similar way that you would set up any other type of logs or logging capabilities for a system or service. So a lot of what I think about for honeypots, it acts in a very similar way as a layer um, that is slightly separate from your services, but it does emulate them very closely, or at least attempts to, in terms of logging or capturing data. So I think of it as being very similar to the system that you're actually trying to emulate. Thank you for the question. Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. I've had a good time talking about this topic and actually learning alongside you all. Um, and thank you all for your questions. And thank you for being here. A couple of things. If you are, this is Global Hack Week, and we have, this is really just the third day of Global Hack Week, really. So let's see. If you have not already, make sure to register for Global Hack Week. There's going to be some great streams happening all week where you can learn more about security. I will also be doing a Tetris tournament later today. It'll be 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. Definitely come out to that. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. It'll just be a good time for us to hang back and play a game. Thank you so much. Thank you for your engagement. So here's the schedule for Global Hack Week, by the way. We are currently we are officially on day 3, starting at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So really in the next 9 minutes or so. So make sure to go out to at noon. We have Today in Global Hack Week. Make sure to go out to that. It'll just be a recap for all of the things that are happening on the schedule today. Here is where you can register for that. Not already registered. Here's how you can register. So there will be a stream for today in Global Hack Week, and it's just a recap of all things happening. It'll give you a good breakdown of the things going on today and how you can get involved. And then I know Alberto is doing an auditing and fixing stream on where you can learn how to audit and fix your vulnerabilities at 1 p.m. today Eastern Time. Make sure to go out to that. That'll be great. And that's how you can register for that stream. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. And I'll be doing Tetris at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope to see you all there. Yeah. Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone. Take these off now. Or just keep them in flash mode. See y'all. Bye.